high expectations coming into the second one, but there was an actual real thing called an insurrection that, all right, so that's real. So maybe this time will be different. And I'm looking through it, and I listened to Trump's speech, and then I read Trump's speeches, and then I'm watching the video, doing all these things. And I'm like, we are socially right and morally right, but legally we're not. We don't have it. I want us to have it. Keep searching for it, but we don't have it. And if you go into this knowing you don't have it, there's other dangers you do. And again, this all anyway. Until I watched the video at the opening arguments kind of thing. I think I watched the right video and I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, I'm still, you haven't changed my mind. You've kind of reinforced my opinions for one thing. This was the timeline of the Pence text, like Trump's text to Pence. Mm-hmm. It's language, it's insurrection versus fomenting versus neglect. So inciting is an explicit thing, and you can't blame organizers for the actions of their participants unless explicitly said to do thing. And I'm like, I've heard the left tell me this, so I should be going to jail, I guess. Then there's fomenting, which is lying to people for years to get them to the natural state of violence, which socially, again, we're right, but legally, it's a hornet's nest. Then there's neglect of not upholding your office. When you realize that there's insurrection happening in your name and you don't immediately say stop, bingo, smoking gun, that's the thing. And then the Pence text timeline. So this was all about calling witnesses. And they're like, all right, get those witnesses on. You've got this. Then they stop, Democrats, so they can go home for Valentine's Day. I want to scream.
You know, they used to say follow the money, and now I think it's follow the media. What are your ratings going to be? You know, they had good ratings on this one. People watched this because they you know, it was exciting. You know, it was a hell of a lot more exciting than hearing Joe Biden talk about, you know,
anything.
On COVID. It's just not as fun to watch. So this was a fun thing to see. And obviously the elephant in the room, or the 43 elephants in the room, whatever that turned out to be, this week was the impeachment. And I did want to talk a little bit about that, but more from the perspective of how it was presented to us. And I thought it was interesting. I picked up an article from the Times this morning by Katie Robertson and Tiffany Tu. And it's entitled, "You Can Barely Tell It's the Same Trial in Cable Coverage of the Proceedings." And they go on to talk about one of the things that they did, which I think is very interesting, and it's something that I've wanted to see, is they obviously watched parallel presentations. They watched Fox News, they watched CNN, MSNBC, and One America, and several others, and they were tracking them as they went along, which is something I think we should see more often. You know, here something's happening now. How are these people responding to it, and how are these people responding to it? So I don't know if you had a chance to watch it this week, Paul. What was your engagement in that? Did you watch a lot of it, or?
Well, you know, I watched a fair amount of it. But of course, I already knew what was going to turn out, so it was kind of pointless to really spend my time worrying about whether or not Mitch McConnell is going to be able to get up there and lie. Yes, is the answer to that. So yeah, it was interesting. The House manager fella, so I forget his last name, who was doing most of the heavy lifting, was quite good, I thought.
Yeah.
And really laid it right out there. And I mean, you know, he was like, well, you know, I know that this is all for shit, but I'm going to put it out here anyway. And yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing, is like, you know, everybody except Lindsey Graham maybe knew what was happening, what was going to happen, and where it was going to go, and you know what the outcome was going to be. And you know, to watch Mitch McConnell try to pretend that he was doing something really brave at the very last.
Yeah, that's
No, I did not watch it anything, so I'm really looking forward to learning from you guys. What did he do?
Well, Mitch, oh, well, you know, he was like, you know, everybody was going on about, oh, well, you know, what's Mitch going to do? 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 And he was like, well, um, you know, what he was, you know, Trump was wrong, and he was committing, you know, he committed crimes, and everything that we said was true, but we're not going to vote. I'm not going to vote against him. I'm going to vote for him to acquit.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, I mean, and everybody's like, wow, Mitch actually admitted that he did something bad. You know, I thought, well, that's Mitch. That's Mitch, man.
Mitch is very calculating. I was searching for the name. Jamie Raskin was the name of the
Yes,
prosecutor.
yes.
And I agree. I thought he was very effective. And the notion came up several times that, you know, we're conducting this quasi-legal proceeding here. It really doesn't have any rules to it that are standard. So you're basically throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. But I thought they did a good job of presenting the case. But as was mentioned several times, the real target here was the public. It was the viewers. That's who they were trying to win over. They knew they were not going to win and convert these 43 incalcitrant Republicans over to the other side. It was never going to happen. I mean, several times during the week, they played the clip of Trump saying during the campaign that he could stand up in the street and shoot somebody and he wouldn't lose any voters. So they understood that they were going against a solid block, but they were playing for the viewers. And I think Mitch McConnell was doing the same thing. You know, what he was saying was, I'm not going to convict this man, but we got to get rid of him. You know, it's like, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be the Brutus who sticks the knife in, but I do want to vote him out. You know, I want to get rid of the son of a bitch. So McConnell is calculating that over the course of the next couple of years, the Republicans can regenerate the old guard party and put an end to the Trumpist regime. And he's trying to thread that needle. I don't think he can do it. I think he didn't make any friends yesterday, as you know, Nancy Pelosi immediately put him down and said, "What a hypocrite that he's doing this." So it was good theater. You know, it was intriguing to watch. I was enthralled by it. But to answer your question, Dustin, basically he said he pulled the legal argument that you can't impeach someone who's not in office. He said he's going to stay by that principle that you can't impeach someone who's not in office. And his thought was that if that became something you could do, then you could go back and take any previous office.
Yeah, I got a list.
And disable, you know, take Hillary Clinton now, and you get a Republican majority. Well, let's go back and, you know, well, she wasn't actually president, so I guess that doesn't apply. But you could impeach Barack Obama, and he would no longer be able to have public office. So Joe Biden couldn't nominate him for the Supreme Court, you know? So there is some substance to what McConnell was saying, but he was using it as an excuse. It wasn't a legitimate, you know, if the shoe had been on the other foot, he would have said convict.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The proper use of that argument is this is complicated and complex, so let's not have a quick trial. let's do our due diligence.
He was
nobody's saying that.
Well, you know, they say if the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. If the law is on your side, you argue the law. He's arguing the law because the facts are all against him. So he's pulling an argument for the law. But it's interesting. You know, the other thing that came out of it is, what is the implication now for the future? And I think I mentioned this maybe before, but what happens if Joe Biden is defeated? You know, he runs for election, he's defeated, and between the time of certification and inauguration, same time period that we were dealing with this year with Trump, Biden decides to, you know, hold a rally and riot and start killing Republicans. you know, and he pulls the same shit. I mean, can we do anything about it then? Do they get a free pass in January to do whatever the hell they want? And we can't, you know, McConnell was also saying, well, you can take them to court. You could, you know, we haven't exhausted it. But it does present an interesting idea that this lame duck person could have, you know, immunity to do whatever he wanted.
That's an interesting. Just put a pin in that. Of that question should be asked in that way, because you'll find the answer of what to do now when you flip it around, when you change through the role play. Yeah. Sorry, Paul.
Oh, it's all right. That was just, you know, from me, but you know, the one thing this really revealed was, you know, the founding fathers weren't absolutely fabulously, you know, right about everything. In fact, they were wrong about this one. Even though they addressed it and they came up with the solution that we've now seen is not working,
Right.
you know, and only because we now have old men who live to be very old men in office. I mean, back in the days of Washington, there was few people that lived to be, you know, 80 or 85, but not very many. And now it's like, yeah, you know, I mean, Donald Trump, by anybody's estimation, should be dead. I mean, he treats his life, he treats his body.
I haven't heard the news, but I hope he is.
Or Lindsey Graham, or, you know, any of these guys who have been abusing their bodies over this period of time, and yet they still keep on putting one foot in the other and another bill on the desk, and let's do this one, you know. But I mean, it's just like we've all gone over this thing a bunch.
Yeah.
Mr. Biden is going to be the president for a while, and Mr. Trump is not, which is good. And as soon as I can, I'll be glad we stop hearing about Mr. Trump, because what he has to say has no merit of any sort. So why are we listening to him? You know, it's like saying, "Oh well, look, here's Kim Jong-un." He wants his big parade before he'll leave, you know, or whatever the bullshit was that he was trying to get done. And you know, let's do something else, guys. You know, and of course, applying my usual set of rules about who's behind all this mess with the money people, they're not very happy with it. It didn't work out quite the way they wanted it to.
Right.
They still got Donald on their hands, which is a real problem. But that, you know, they're going to keep they're still raking in the money. Don't get it wrong. And they're still, but now they're causing ordinary and well-educated people to think about what's actually happening, who's doing what in the background here. I mean, you know, why is this happening this way? And there are some people, a few of us, I guess, who think about those questions. And then, if anything, that's the one thing that they have really fucked up on, is that they've caused more people to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
How can we do something about this? Because I mean, I don't, you know, what else are you going to do? You're going to go down, go sit up and crawl out on your porch and watch the revolution start killing people? I mean, you know.
Yeah, you welcome a police state, and on both sides, or however you do it. Like if it's only punitive.
Yeah.
And welcome it. Yeah, that's,
you know, so the education
one day.
That's basically where I'm at. Absolutely, the education thing is top of the bill for me.
Mm-hmm.
You start teaching people what this is all about and why these things happen. With clever shows, you know, we can turn this into a really good long series of, you know, shoot 'em ups. This could have happened. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of video that they can come out of this with. And if somebody kind of get to these guys and say, look, let's ease in here the things that matter. And so, yeah, what's happening if this guy is, you know, not going to die and he's not going to leave office, and you know, what'll happen there? And then you play that out as a movie or a series or whatever. Yeah. And then, you know, but of course the Koch brothers don't give a crap about that. They don't have anything.
I would love to see. I would love to see both sides. We need the punitive but also the let's give everybody a check and some health care, and
oh yeah,
you win office. But also you have to go after. You have to do the punitive thing. You can't let the other thing stand. So you have to do both, and they're morally conflicted.
Paul, what came to mind for me was what you had said years ago, and we've talked about this many times, is when the Soviet Union fell, how we didn't have the clearly drawn lines anymore, and the distinction between capitalism and communism was no longer the prominent issue. So we had to think of something else. What has happened over the last really 5 years is Donald Trump has revolutionized politics in America. He has completely changed the dynamics of politics. And it used to be, and but part of it is because of his genius. And I use that word, very reluctantly, but you have to admit the guy has got, he understands the media. He knows he has
He's a genius con artist.
Right. I mean, in the same way that, and of course, there's always the Hitler comparison, but the same way Hitler used the media of his time, the big rallies and the films and radio and other things to get his message out, Trump has done that. And when Trump was defeated in the election, the media ratings started going down. Fewer people were watching that. Well, if Trump's not on it, what the hell am I going to watch Fox News for? What are they telling me besides Trump, Trump, Trump? And the same really applies to
so kind of boring.
And some of the others. So we're going to have to create a straw man Trump to keep this dynamic going. This bifurcation of America. The only way you don't make money on a sporting event by having two people cooperate with each other and help each other, run faster or shoot better or whatever it might be. You have a sporting event where they're competing with each other, and it's the knocking of the heads, and it's that interaction that people want to see. Well, we've now raised it up, and what I'm fearful of is we've raised that competition up to the point where it's who's going to win in actual physical confrontations on the street. What happens if the Trumpites have another rally and the Proud Boys show up and the Black Lives Matter people show up too, and there's nobody to distinctly draw a line between them? We're going to have, we're going to have a civil war. So I point back to the media. What did you hear about, let's see, the last time, what did you hear about Jimmy Carter after he lost the election to George Bush? Not much, not until he started doing, his philanthropic work and working with Habitat for Humanity and other things. You didn't,
building houses.
Yeah, he wasn't there. Nobody cared what he had to say anymore. Well, that wasn't very good news. And George Bush was a terrible TV personality. So, we had a war to elevate his personality. After the war was over, he lost. He wasn't interesting. He wasn't somebody they wanted to see. Along comes Bill Clinton. He's an interesting guy. He gets blowjobs in the White House. Wow, and then we go back to the Republican and we have another war. So, it's this news cycle, this long-term news cycle. And I wanted to share with you, I don't want to go on here too long, but I was pulling up something today that I thought was very intriguing. And this actually comes from The Guardian, which is no bastion of liberalism. Manchester Guardian. Bad things can happen quickly, but good things aren't built in a day. And as they unfold, they'll be out of sync with the news cycle. A peace researcher, John Galtung, pointed out that if a newspaper came out only once every 50 years, it would not report a century of celebrity gossip and political scandals. It would report momentous global changes, such as an increase in life expectancy. The nature of the news is likely to distort people's view of the world because of a mental bug that psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman called the availability heuristic. People estimate the probability of an event or the frequency of a kind of thing by the ease in which instances come to mind. In many walks of life, this is serviceable rule of thumb, but whenever a memory turns up high in the result list in the mind's search engine for reasons other than frequency, because it is recent, vivid, gory, distinctive, or upsetting, people will overestimate how likely it is in the world. We're constantly blowing the guy up. You know, he tweets something. Well, boy, this is headline news. Well, he's an idiot, you know, so what do you care? You know, well,
Well,
it's people, the news media doesn't report things that they think are important. They report things that you think are important.
right.
And if you think that's news, you're going to get a shitload of it, even though, you know, what's happening in the world, what's going on in Myanmar, what's going on in China, we know nothing. But what you think is important, you're going to get dumped down every day. So, no.
Well, he did just he did a master class for future politicians, and of course they're doing it now, of and the thing that we were looking on screen, kind of that last descriptor of what the most intense things you feel happen more often, like that.
Right.
I'm sorry, what you just said. It was the same kind of thing of like Trump is this masterclass of, we've said before, if you watched wrestling, you understand how this works,
Right.
of how you play that crowd and how you never admit defeat, how you sow chaos and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And, or if you watch any Marvel movie, or like we know this concept, and this was the master class of how to do that. So I'm going to see it. We're going to see it everywhere if we're not already.
Somebody along the way, some clever politicians is going to point this out and say, you know, the media, not all the media should be owned by a private industry. Okay, that's basically, you know, let's let government have some of it, so that whatever's being said, you know, that doesn't necessarily agree with what the corporations want, still get out there. All right. I mean, we've had essentially variations on that particular theme. I mean, but you know, when we were kids, Dustin, pardon you, you know, what was on the news, you know, Walter Cronkite, right, and Eric Seberide, and you know, while they were working for private industry, nonetheless, they were also acutely aware of how this fit within the corporations and in the political processes of what's going on in the current thing. And they tried to be balanced about it, which we talk about all the time. And like I say, I think the only way to do that is to have media, some of the media owned by the government. You do that. Well, you know, we start out by putting any of the Koch brothers in jail.
That was the good idea of the because I can string up a wireless network in my house, I could, in my community, theoretically come up with our own wireless network. And if we do an hours of news, then we get the government funding the same way the networks were put up. Let's do it on a local municipal level, and that direct the funding in the same way. And like, yeah, we've got all the tools, and we have the past precedent. So,
yeah. Well, I've found in a lot of areas where I've worked over the years that while people may express, you know, deep sympathies for certain, you know, political philosophies or what have you, in the end, people are lazy. They want somebody to give it to them. You know, democracy. Oh my God, we have to go to meetings. We have to talk about the. You know, just somebody take care of that shit. I don't want to do it.
I want to interject because I've been heavily thinking on this, and the number 3.5% has been sticking in my mind. You only need 3.5% of the population to do dramatic change or revolution. Like, you go look it up. And so, and there's also what role in society do you play? Are you the preacher? Are you the reporter? Are you that kind of role? And if we get 3.5% of people who care in the right direction, then we don't need everybody. We only need 3.5%. And they'll do the thing that everybody wants. It's like, yeah, I need to trust you to feed me this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lower our.
Well, it really is what you're promoting. If you think of it from the other point of view, you know, you're the good guy. What happens when the bad guys apply the same principle?
Yeah, well, the 1%, yeah.
Right.
Hell, let's do the same thing. Instead of money, it's volunteer hours. We don't have physical money. We have labor money.
Well, for some of us, we have the time and the resources
Yeah.
to do that. But for many people who may be in, people we want to appeal to, they have time for it. They work all day. They're tired. They come home. They don't want to think about, complex philosophies.
Right.
They just want to have a beer and, watch TV and go to bed. It's not something that you can expect much more than that small percentage. So
we're the ones thinking about it, and we get
Right.
one small action from 300 other million people.
Yeah, no.
It's a lot closer than we think, guys, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we're kind of like chunks of this are not the people that would normally do this, because I'm an old man and he's an old man and you're not exactly a spring chicken. So, I don't. Somebody said, let's go. Hey, look, we're having a revolution, grab your weapon. I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. Unless they show up at my house, I might be, I might start shooting back. But other than that, I'm not going to go out there and when we see these guys, what they're doing now, it's like, good grief. The population doesn't think very highly of those folks. When they see some bunch of guys smash a cop in a door, it's like, wait a minute.
Well, it is interesting, getting back to the nature of the media and what the media is doing. It's really difficult to get anyone interested in something that's not on fire. If it bleeds, it leads. It's whatever is going to catch people's attention. I mean, I know I work on water projects here, and I've put out information to people about the Watershed Watch and all of the groups associated with that. I get no responses. Now, if I went out and said your water is poisoned, boy, I'd get a lot of shit. So if I said it's poisoned, and what I meant was there's a little bit of leakage from this coming into the, I have to exaggerate it, in other words. One of the things that I saw, Paul, I don't know if you caught this week, the film that the defense was putting up, I thought they did an excellent job. The defense, now this is Republicans I'm talking about, they did an excellent job, because the Democrats, which in something I couldn't believe they were doing, kept hanging on the words "get out and fight like hell," and they were trying to build a case on that. And what, Dustin, did you see what they did in response? The Republicans put on a video, and they had, honestly, Democrats saying nearly 1,000 times, fight, 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 fight. They kept doing fight, fight, fight. It just kept coming back and back and back at them. And I thought, well, that's, Democrats deserve that, because we have selectively taken things out over the years that are deliberate distortions based on omission. One of the prime ones, well, two things that I've heard Donald Trump say. One, about 9/11, when he said there were a group of people across in New Jersey looking at the burning towers and cheering.
Yeah,
I saw that. I saw that on TV. Now, it doesn't get reported. I don't know where the clip went, but I saw it myself. And I don't think anybody, because it was on the day. I was watching it live, and I saw the people. Somebody went over to New Jersey so they get a better panoramic view of what was going on. And I saw the crowd there, and I heard them cheering. So Trump was not lying about that. And after the riots in Charlottesville, Trump said, "Oh, they're fine people on both sides." Well, the full clip was, yeah, they're fine people on both sides, not the Nazis, not those people, but people who were coming to legitimately protest the taking down of statues and so forth. Well, you never hear that other part of the line. And I think that's where, and most people make their judgments these days, not by going back to the source, but by going to the repeated line that they're hearing from the distorted press. And it's on both, I'll say, there are demons on both sides in this case. So I thought that was interesting, and I guess what I'm continuing to appeal to is where do we find someone who's going to give us a candid and fair analysis, not of necessarily the news itself, but of the reporting of the news. You know, I keep looking, who do I go to for my sources? So we've talked about that before, where we go to look, but I'm looking for a critique on how the news is being presented. And I would love to, I think that would be something interesting to watch, but maybe
Is that not the format of Rising though?
It is, but I honestly think they need to have more involvement. I don't think that Crystal Ball and Cigar can continue to have. I think they like each other too much, and they tend to agree with each other about things, and they don't. I never hear them call the other's points in question. I mean, they're very
now, and also, are you talking about, like, because they branch off into talking about politics, not just the news? Like, do you want to watch just a news gotcha, or?
Well, politics is part of the news. What politicians are saying and what they're doing is part of the news. So I don't.
But just hyper focusing on the media reaction.
Well, I want here's the case laid out. Now here are the valid points on both sides of this for you to consider before you make up your mind. I'm not going to make up your mind for you, but I'd love to hear somebody who made the Republican case and said, this is what the Republicans are saying, and this is what the Democrats are saying, and you can compare that and make up your mind. The way it's presented to us is we are completely on the left, and you can watch us, or you can switch over to watch somebody completely on the right. There's very little middle ground. I tend to listen to NPR, watch PBS, and look for more centrist kinds of things, not because necessarily I think they're the best news, but they don't go into it with a deliberate bias. And they talk about the process now. Everybody says, well, we need to heal. Well, before you get the wound to heal, you have to clean it out and find out what's going on. Let's have the truth. Well,
one of the things that is kind of crossed my mind while you're discussing that is, one of the things that this media system that we've built does is enables ordinary people and literally one or two people to put news into the system. Sometimes it's difficult, and then you got to persist, but that's what the Twitter's for, among other things. And once you begin to magnify that, oh look, here's a Twitter item, and you shove it in the feed, and it goes out, and the next thing you know, you got 2,500 people reading what you're doing, which means you can have more impact as an individual person or an individual group. And if you're organized about it, then that's what you should. That's how I think that's one of the ways you would go at it. Set about, say, okay, we're going to feed this out to the, not one particular, always the same way. This is what you're saying, right? Rising. I mean, but it's got to be coherent in some fashion where you feel like, that's this, rather than, oh, what's that? So, I mean, this is more complex. And of course, there's a lot more work involved, which, as you know, people don't want to do that, but if you're trying to save the planet and the country, you have to do that.
I guess essentially I'm calling for a more scientific approach to the news than an adversarial approach.
I would think you'd be calling for a more organic.
Well, we model our politics after courtroom proceedings, where if I'm the defense attorney, I'll say anything I can within the law to defend my client and not tell you anything negative about my client. I mean, that's the adversarial system in play, where there's a vigorous support for both sides of an argument, and then a jury has to decide. A scientific approach is, or I'm going to postulate something and I'm going to gather data and I'm going to attempt to formulate a hypothesis that makes sense. And if you come along and say, no, I think there's an error in there, I don't say, no, you're wrong. It's, well, let me look at what you've got. Let me look at your evidence so I can weigh that. So more science in the process of doing of coming to a conclusion about things. Global climate change is a prime example. That should not be an adversarial discussion. It should be, somebody says the planet is about to explode. I'd like to know more about that. Tell me something, give me some reasoned arguments on both sides. Heard somebody say today that the closing down the pipeline, as Biden has done, is going to actually raise Earth temperatures. And I'm scratching my head saying, how the hell did you come up with that statement? So I want to hear, all right, you're making this statement. Give me the evidence, give me the rationale behind that. I want somebody to apply scientific principles to the stuff that we're absorbing. Does that make any sense to you, Paul?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's you're basically assuming that scientific method is a correct method all the time, which it's not. And it's not even one that people will apply all the time, even if it gives you correct answers, because they're not always looking for correct answers. They're looking for the answer they want.
I'm sorry, they're looking for what?
They're looking for the answer they want.
Oh.
What do you mean? Oil pipelines? No, they don't. They don't do that kind of. My life savings are tied up in that business, and I can't have them do that. So, we're going to oppose it. But it's always about presenting something to people in a way that they're willing to look at it and read. Yes, I mean, if you can't do that, you can't put it in a fashion that ordinary people who don't have to necessarily have much of long understandings about the matter at hand. If you can't put something out there that they will understand enough of it to at least kind of say, well, I know something about that, and I'll go find something, or I'll call someone and he'll tell me about it, whatever it might be. If you don't do that, if you can't do that, then you can't have any effect.
No.
That was, I was trying to bring up the organic method, and Paul, you were alluding to this earlier, of how we can have an effect. Now, I also kind of cringe on purely technocratic answers of just the science. Like we need that, but not just that. Like, what is the other part of the balance was that organic methodology of how we organize. So it's like, we do need, mob needs input, but also restraint.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's the answer for everything, if you think about it. If like corporations need input, but also restraint. Everybody needs input, but